Picture this. You're 42 years old and you're rolling with a 25-year-old blue belt. You see an opening for a shot. Your mind knows the move, but your body just can't cash the check. If you felt like that explosive edge is fading on the mats, you're not going crazy. You're probably just not training it. And if you don't use it, you lose it. Today we're going to talk about power, what it is, what it isn't, and how you can improve it. And if you stick around to the end, I'll show you a simple framework that you can use to plug and play into your existing training so that you can beat Father Time back with a stick. Power is the first thing to go as we age, but what is power? It's a term that people throw around a lot in strength and conditioning circles, but when you drill down a bit, it becomes clear that people don't really understand what it is or how to train it effectively. Depending on what you're trying to track, power is the product of force times velocity or work over time. Each equation gives us different things. Force times velocity gives us peak power, while work over time gives us average power across a rep or a set. You can think of this as quality versus capacity. Now back to the issue at hand. Why do you feel like you're stuck in the mud? As we age, force and velocity, or put in other terms, strength and speed, begins to deteriorate, and power becomes the casualty. The older we get, we experience a preferential loss of type 2 fibers. These are the fibers that produce force quickly. We lose the motor neurons that innervate these fibers, which means motor units get bigger but slower. This naturally leads to a reduction in muscle size, and smaller muscles means less force potential. Our tendons also become more compliant, which means energy storage and transfer slows down. There's other factors that play into this, like coordination and fatigue resistance changes, but I'm pretty sure by now you get the idea. In the absence of a specific input, things change. Biology responds to specific signals, not good intentions. However, don't despair. These changes can be mitigated to a considerable degree. How might you ask? By getting stronger and faster, and then expressing that newfound strength and speed in movements that demand high levels of coordination. Now, as we've already discussed, if you want to influence power, you have to go downstairs and develop your strength and speed, because power is a second-order effect. Now let's tease this out a little bit. To get stronger, I want to choose compound exercises that can be progressed in a meaningful way. Think exercises like squats, deadlifts, bench, overhead press, pulls, or any of their variants. You'll want to train these 2 to 3 times a week at intensities greater than 80% of a 1-rep max. For most older combat athletes, I think 85 to 90% is the sweet spot. Do 3 to 4 sets of 2 to 5 reps. You can test a training max every couple of months, or if you don't feel like doing a 1-rep max, you can do a 3 or a 5-rep max and then plug that into any online calculator. They're actually pretty accurate. Lifts like these make up the bedrock of your strength training. But that only covers one side of the power equation. What about speed? What comes to mind when most people hear the word speed is sprints. But speed is actually a pretty broad term that is open to interpretation depending on the context. For us older grapplers, speed just means rapid force expression. How quickly can I produce force in a coordinated manner? And this is where jump training comes into play. Now you might be saying, Adam, we don't jump in Jiu-Jitsu unless we're jumping guard. You disgust me. And that's correct, but remember, your strength training should not resemble the sport. In fact, if it does resemble the sport, you're likely just fucking around. Our S&C should be spent building general qualities that can later be expressed in the sport. Jump training accomplishes 4 things really well. Contraction speed, which is how fast our muscle fibers can shorten. Neural speed, which is how fast a motor unit can turn on. Coordination speed, which is how fast different segments can sequence. And decision speed, how fast can you perceive and act. This last one, of course, is task specific, but I'd hypothesize there's carryover to movement in general. I do some form of jump training once to twice a week. I measure progress by using a jump trainer device for vertical jumps or just measure distance for broad jumps. I find this incredibly motivating, and this gives me real-time feedback to help toggle my effort between sets. I do anywhere from 15 to 25 jumps per session. I quit when progress noticeably stalls or when I become disinterested. Jumping also doubles as prep work for whatever the main event is that day. Now let's talk about the coordination of strength and speed. This is of paramount importance because ultimately our goal is to express that power on the mats. This is where the union of skill and physical capacity really come together. There are 2 exercises that always reappear in my programming throughout the year. But before I go into that, I want to emphatically say that these are not magical exercises. In fact, there are no magical exercises. We could pick about 19 other substitutes for these and be just fine. These are just good options for the goals that we're talking about here. Too often people talk about exercise selection as being the end-all be-all when it comes to programming. Exercise selection is like the last thing that I do when I sit down to write a program. I first think about the training age of my athletes, their goals, their needs, and what physiological qualities am I trying to instill. And then I choose exercises to help cover all my bases. All right, I'm off my soapbox. The two exercises that I feel really bridge the gap between strength, speed, and coordination are the power clean and the push press. Both of these teach full body expression of power and proximal to distal sequencing. And the learning curve for each doesn't really require a ton of time investment relative to other advanced lifts. I'm going to create a video on the efficacy of learning the Olympic lifts for older combat athletes, and in fact, that's what I originally set out to do with this video, but I wanted to cover the whole force-velocity relationship first before delving into that. And if you're interested, I can also create a tutorial as an adjunct to this video so that you can begin to practice these exercises in your own training. If so, let me know in the comments. One additional exercises that I'll add into the mix is the pendlay row. I'm adding this here because the power clean is simultaneously a hip and knee dominant exercise, and a push press is a full body vertical push. So I feel like adding in some upper body pulling explosively just covers a base that makes sense. There's not really a high coordination demand with the pendlay row, including it just gives us a more well-rounded structure. Pulling strength is non-negotiable in grappling. Being able to pull explosively is critical for arm drag, single legs, and a variety of other scenarios. If you're beginning to see how these lifts can completely change your game, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about smart, sustainable strength training for older grapplers to help keep you in the game for the long haul. Now, as promised, here's a simple framework that you can apply to your existing training. We can start off these sessions with some jump training. I typically fall in the ballpark of 15 to 25 reps. From here, we'll move on to our power movement. We can do anywhere between 3 to 4 sets of 2 to 4 reps at about 75 to 80% of a 1 rep max. If you're not sure what your 1 rep max is, just do 7 or 8 RPE. 75 to 80% is a great range for these lifts. It's generally a weight that you can move quickly and confidently while making amazing progress. From here, we'll move on to our max strength work. We'll do anywhere between 3 and 4 sets of 2 to 5 reps at 85 to 90% of a 1 rep max. I like to leave 1 or 2 reps in reserve here. So let's bring it back to square one. That feeling of being a step behind and losing your pop on the mats is a real thing, but it doesn't have to be your destiny. By focusing on getting stronger and faster and then coordinating that strength and speed in a meaningful way will translate to more powerful technique on the mats. If you're ready to start building power, I put together a free 4-week jump mini program just for grapplers over 40. Click the link in the description below to grab it now. And drop a comment below. Which of these lifts are you most excited to try?